close that. Screw it. I'm gonna load up.
Well, I need to make sure that the... Can you preview it?
Blacklist games. Let's see if the channel should be posted. Videos. Yeah, live now. Let me turn this volume down.
Wait, it is live?
Yeah.
Okay. Move it up a little bit. How's that?
My head's kind of... I don't know why you have it so far that way. Just put it a little more this way. I'll share it.
Is it crooked
here? Check. Send the check. So my chat didn't go through. Oh, there it is. Okay. Share. All right, I have to go through these real quick and share it. Okay, I think I can see the chat here. There it is. What should the post be?
Yeah, I'm gonna turn it. You can scoot over a little bit because that light is kind of bright. Hey everybody, we're just doing a little chat today about Alter Quest. We're just sharing this out to Facebook and making sure everybody can find it. We're gonna chat about the game a little bit, and we'll also answer questions as people come in and have any questions for us.
All right, it's posted on Facebook. I'm gonna put it on Twitter also, just in case.
We've been kind of quiet, like I think our last live stream about Alter Quest was February 14th, I think it was. We've been busy wrapping up Aftershock content just into the printer and designing Alter Quest. We're pretty far along with it now, so it's in really good shape. We're kind of focusing on the campaign stuff now, which we'll probably not talk too much about today yet because we're still, ironing some things out with that. We're kind of focusing in on the core content of the game. So,
all right. So I can't get it on Twitter, but we have a few people in here. So
you got it shared on Facebook, okay?
Yeah, it's on Facebook. It's not on Twitter because I have to do it on my phone, and my phone is up there. So
on Twitter, you have to do it on your phone.
Well, because I logged into, I put it on my Twitter, but not Blacklist's. Because I don't have Blacklist's Twitter login on mine. It's on my phone.
All right, shared it. All right. So, those of you who are familiar with Street Masters and Brook City know that Alter Quest will utilize our MDS, the modular deck system, which is basically various types of decks in the game that you can combine in different ways to create different scenarios without any kind of pre-scripted scenario book or anything like that. It's just different combinations of decks played differently and lots of replay value in different combinations. So in Alter Quest we have hero decks, we have threat decks, villain decks, quest decks. We also have lurkers and altar cards. Altar cards are, there's always going to be an altar in, most quests will have an altar in it. You can find it in a random room, but they also have ongoing effects that can affect the game, and just changing out one card changes that effect. Is this a little crooked to you? Looks a little crooked.
I don't think it is.
Okay.
Looks fine.
Well, let me know if you guys think it looks crooked, because maybe I'm just tilted. But I can see my shelf looks like it's going down that way.
Well, it's because I think it's because of the way the phone's case is.
Just this switched a tad.
How do you...
I think it's fine. That's fine. Yeah, that's good. I wouldn't mess with it anymore because it's probably gonna be worse. So hero decks, we're kind of going to talk mostly about hero decks today, but I also just want to give you an overview about how all these different decks are combined in the game and how they create. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. How many heroes are we looking at prior to unlocks from the Kickstarter? So the base game will have 4 heroes in it. They are the 4 heroes that are on the cover. We have Cedrin, Rowan, and the 2 we haven't previewed yet are the Harpy Mage, Quella, and the Vampire Warrior, Myrene. And
Marine.
hopefully we're gonna show some of their sculpts and art later, very soon before the Kickstarter. So everybody here, when you play Alter Quest, every player is going to take a hero deck. Hero deck has their hero character card. These are ugly prototypes, but hero character card, 1 or 2 pieces of equipment that go in play, and they're unique to your hero, and then your deck of cards. Deck of cards have action cards, reaction cards, and feat cards. They all function differently. Action cards cost an action to play. Feat cards do not. They play on your turn. They're just free to play. And then reaction cards have specific timing, like usually when an enemy's attacking you or moves into a specific area, you can play a reaction card to get some kind of bonus. So everybody picks a hero card or hero deck to play. Then you pick a threat deck to go up against. And the threat deck, for example, in the ones we've been teasing so far, are the Frocks. They have a reference card, which will probably be the divider. We'll have the information about how threat tokens function within that deck. And then the deck is minions and traps and events that are unique to that threat type. And I know a lot of you are thinking, oh, if I play Alter Quest, am I going to always just see just these threats that I pick, and that's the only monsters I'll see? No, we also have a lurker deck. So the way a lurker deck works is every monster we make for this game, every minion, like for example, every Frox will have an extra copy that goes in the lurker deck, and that doesn't have a colored base assigned to it like that. It's just a regular miniature. And that deck will continue to grow as your collection grows, and lots of different game effects will make you draw a lurker card. And lurkers are just random enemies that you'll find in the dungeon, and it kind of mixes things up. So it's not always just your threat deck. The threat deck goes over there, and the threat deck has a thematically linked villain, but the villain deck is separate, and you can play any threat deck with any villain deck, so you can swap them in and out. But for example, the Frox, they have this big, huge toad guy named Bulks, the Belch Lord, and he leads the Frox, thematically, but he can be used with the Thralls or whatever, any other threat deck you want. But for you pick your threat deck, you pick your villain deck, and then you pick your quest deck. And the quest is your objective, why you're going to the dungeon. In this example, we have a quest called Cleansing the Altar. So the villain has taken control of this altar, and he's made himself immune through this power of the altar. So your job is to go in there, collect pieces of the altar, and take it to the altar and cleanse it so you can defeat the villain. And that's how this quest functions. And again, it can work with any combination of threat and villain, all this stuff. You just sock it in these different decks. And then you also pick an altar. In this example, we have the Unstable Altar, which is kind of the most chaotic altar in the game. It messes with the altar pool the most. And that moves on to the next element. The altar pool is a collection of custom dice with 6 different symbols. That we call them runes. And these runes are used to trigger various abilities in the game. At the start of the game, you'll roll this altar pool, and that will determine what runes are available to use during the game. Hero cards, equipment cards, threats, villains, all these different cards in the game have rune effects that can trigger, that have an additional effect on top of what you normally play. So for example, I'll use Cedrin's Steel Mace here. It has an effect on here that's an action. It's an attack. It uses his strength. But there's also a mountain rune effect down there that I can exhaust this card and spin the mountain to deal a damage to an enemy within range, which is the range is 1. So that just means Cedrin can, if there's a mountain in the pool, which there is right now, I can exhaust that card, roll it, and after I roll it, you'll see that changed up what's available. Now there's water in the pool, which Frox love to use. So as heroes, you want to balance out using your abilities to do extra things, but not giving the enemy too many runes to use as well. And the Unstable Altar on the quest phase will just roll all those up, and you don't know what's going to happen. So the Unstable Altar is cool because it changes up the game every turn, but also it's hard to plan for because it'll just roll the pool. So you have to kind of replan every single turn.
So how long will the stream go? We're just kind of playing it by ear here, so we'll be.
Yeah, we're hoping it's not too long. We're hoping to do a lot of these. So
yeah, I mean we're here to answer questions as they come up, discuss anything that anybody wants to hear more, content on. But we'll be trying to do these probably once or twice a week leading up to the Kickstarter. So.
Yeah, and speaking of dice, also this will use dice similar to the dice we used in Street Masters in Brook City. We're playtesting with Street Masters dice right now, but these have no blanks, mostly successes. There's successes, focus results, and criticals. Success, they're successes. Criticals are treated like successes, but they explode, so you roll more dice, which we love, as people who play our games know. And focus results are, if you have focus tokens, which you gain throughout the game, you can spend one to make a focus result a success. If you don't have any, after you roll dice, you get a gain focus for each unused focus result. So if you do poorly on a roll, you'll gain focus, so next time you can do better. The game has lots of tests in it, and tests are, you will see on the character card, there are 6 different attributes. You have might, endurance, might, fortitude, agility, willpower, charisma, and intellect. And those will be tested in the game for various reasons. For example, Cedrin, the steel mace I mentioned earlier, has an action. It's attack with might. So I would look at my might, I have 2. So I would roll 2 dice with Cedrin when I'm attacking with my mace. I just roll dice and, oh look, I got one of each. I got a success, a focus, and a critical. So I would re-roll the critical, and that's a pretty good attack.
So a couple questions here. How much exploration is there in the game, and does it feel like exploring a dungeon? Cool atmospheric events, and so that's kind of twofold, because when you're playing just a quest, the quest cards, which will kind of describe the room and give you an event or something to do in the room, those come out in different orders as you're exploring, so you don't know what's coming up next. So that's an element of exploration there. Also, you don't know what's going to appear in the room as far as features go. You might find a magic mirror, you might find a locked chest, and those have different effects as well. So those will mix it up every time you play a quest. But then also when you play, like for example, if you play the campaign, which we haven't got too much into the campaigns yet, but campaigns will also add a new element of exploration where they can add other layers of a narrative and just randomness that might come up during a quest you've already played before. Because the quests themselves are more like guidelines, kind of like more like archetypes of quests, because we want to be able to modify those during campaigns. So even if you're playing the Cleanse the Altar as a one-off quest with whatever combination of cards you want, this campaign might use that Cleansing the Altar quest, but it'll have different parameters around it.
Yeah, it might say you're specifically trying to cleanse the Drowning Altar. So you pull a Drowning Altar, and for example, the Frocks have taken control of this, and they're just empowering this water element into the altar. So the campaign might specify which combination of decks you use for that quest.
And so the other question we had there was
before you get into that, you talked about features. That's another modular element to the game, because there is a deck of feature cards. And so when you do a quest, typically the quest will give you a specific setup, but normally you just pick a room on the board. It is a fixed board. You pick a room to put your stair tile, and that's where you start. And you just explore the dungeon. And the rooms are not just prescribed about, like, this is where this thing is, this is where this thing is. The quest deck will tell you when you enter a room, you draw a feature card to put a feature in that room, and you draw a quest card. So it could be a bookshelf, and this quest card might be attached to it. It has an effect if you're at the bookshelf. But these different combination of things make it so the game always is different when the exploration makes it. So the board always has a different layout. The quest always feels different. You can kind of decide where you go, and you're not going to use the whole board every quest. So you might just, go focus on this side of the board. You might go straight to the middle. You determine how you, explore the board, but it always feels different every quest.
So we have another question here about Street Masters has small light campaign stories. Brook City are just individual cases, no connecting stories. How will all those requests be bigger or longer? So there'll be a rule set in the game, in the base game. It'll tell you how to play linked quests. If you want to just link quests together, you can do your own. It'll have, it won't even present you with a narrative. It'll be more just kind of generic. Here's what this enemy is doing. So it'll let you kind of create your own campaign, essentially. You just play whatever quests you want, any combination, and you just gradually improve yourself as you go, and the enemy improves as well. If you play like a structured campaign, we'll have campaign decks. That's a more narrative way to play, where it'll link quests together, tell you what quest to play, what's going to appear here, what characters you meet. and those will just chain into a longer story. And we're going to try to have more narrative and dialogue and everything in between quests, which are in this campaign guide in the rule book. And then we also plan, we won't discuss it much now, but we'll have more deluxe campaign, like pretty much a boxed campaign content. So we'll get into that more as we unveil more toward the Kickstarter. But yeah, we're trying to do as much as we can to provide a very fulfilling one-off experience if you just want to set up and play and have a cool, dungeon crawl one-off. But also we want to provide that narrative campaign for some deep story and everything, some character development.
There is progression as you can upgrade deck cards in your hero deck, but you can also get new equipment to basically equipment can be thought of as like tactics and street masters. They kind of just always available here to you, giving you more options. So in a campaign, you will get more equipment and kind of change up how your character will play.
So we had another question here about should I start selling my plasma now? Yeah, probably.
Well, one thing we do want to focus on this Kickstarter is we have lots of cool stretch goals planned for it and everything, but we want to keep the all-in cost as reasonable as possible, not kind of go out of control, because we kind of want to treat this Kickstarter as a launching point for this game line, not like let's do everything for this game all at once. We kind of just want to start a nice solid foundation and have a game we can build on for years.
So the yeah, but the bank need a loan, a cool million, Chris. Just get a loan for a cool million to cover us. What has been each of your favorite parts of the design process of this game? I'm actually personally just starting the campaign side, and that's something I've been really anxious for, because this setting, the IP we're building for this world is something I've been wanting to write books in, and it's been something we've been kind of talking about for a while. So getting to do the campaign is very exciting for me, working on their narrative and everything. But I think aside from that, just kind of developing all the different, and this kind of goes in with the IP building. I just love coming up with different types of monsters and different heroes and different characters. That's kind of like probably my biggest contribution to this game. Adam has been taking much more of a lead on just mechanical aspects, designing decks, designing the rules and everything like that.
He's just saying that so you can blame me if you don't like it.
Well, I mean, it's based on stuff we've already done, so I think it's the blame. But
it's nothing. It's nothing like. It's more of a.
It's an iterative
building off of a foundation that we started with, like Street Masters. And if anybody who's played one of our games, old games, Dark Frontier, was something we had this fate pool that we used in that game that we really wanted to utilize more, and that's kind of where the altar pool came from in this game, and I'm really excited about that. Like it makes the game play differently all the time. Like what's available to you, what cards you want to play on your turn is determined. Like, oh well, I want to play this card because I want to use that mountain. It's really good right now. We have a bad habit of calling these things mountains and whatever symbols we use for the prototype, but the final game will be more like these runes, like these more abstract runes. So I like the altar pool. I'm very excited about all, like Brady said, we're having all these cool new threat faction, enemy factions in this game. Not just standard fantasy stuff like orcs and goblins. We have, really cool concepts we really hope to hit all these stretch goals for. It's been really fun planning for that. So.
The other question we had here, any hero stories? This won't have hero stories, but we will try to work in, like the characters you play as, we want them to feel iconic. So there will definitely be references in any stories you play, depending on who you're playing as.
And we also want to make it so like campaigns can have, maybe some campaigns could have roles where it's like, oh, you're the leader or you're the family member for this story. So that's in that way we can play with any hero in that story and it still makes sense.
And also, just as a side note, a little behind the scenes, you would not believe those story decks. They don't seem like it, but they just take so long to finalize and get.
Well, it's like the sheer number.
Yeah, there's just so many.
We have so many fighters in the game that they all have story decks.
Yeah, because when Street Master started, we had like 9, 10 fighters, so the hero stories wasn't a problem. But then we expand the roster to like 17, 18, 20 fighters, and it's a lot of decks to juggle.
Yeah, Dark Frontier, don't know about that. That's all up to Ulysses, I'm not sure.
So somebody here never heard of Alter Quest. Fill them in.
Alter Quest is an upcoming board game by Blacklist. It is uses the MDS, which is the modular deck system, which we used in Street Masters and Brook City. You can look those games up. Street Masters has lots of reviews on YouTube and Board Game Geek. You can check it out. Alter Quest is a dungeon crawling adventure fantasy cooperative dungeon crawling board game with campaign play, solo play. You know, if you're playing solo, you play as one hero. It's not, you don't have to double hand it. Lots of modular elements like hero, you know, like I mentioned earlier in the stream, hero decks, threat decks, villain decks, quest decks, alter cards, lurkers, features, all these different elements that can, basically all these different elements can make, it's like a sandbox, you know, like you can make your own quest with all these pieces, or you can follow a campaign guide that tells you which ones to use. Lots of replay value with different combinations of all these different elements. Yeah, frog people, super excited about the frogs. They're really cool.
Yeah, we have a lot of kind of unorthodox creatures for the world. And I saw somebody asked, wasn't there someone who asked if there's anthropomorphic heroes?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there, yeah, I'm almost past that. So, yeah, they're actually...
on the box cover, you'll see one, the Harpy.
Yeah.
She is, you probably can't see very well in that cover piece, but...
Yeah, because the Harpies, it's kind of...
they're like wingless Harpies.
Yeah, the Harpies in this world, they used to be traditional Harpies. They were just, you know, kind of just more... human form birds, but they kind of have been evolving more toward humans. So now they're just kind of like humans with bird features essentially. So, but we also have a very interesting race in the world called the Steern. That's Steern, and they're kind of like horse people. We haven't shown them yet, but we'll definitely have a hero from one of them because I'm really excited about that culture and everything.
Good, we can start. Martin's here, so we can start all over for him.
Oh, right. The book thing is a compendium, a potential thing for this point. We're actually this is something that we've already been building ahead of time. So if we ever get to a point in this game line where we can do a compendium, because like the Street Masters one came with our second Kickstarter, our reprint. Assuming Alter Quest does well enough, we're already prepping that just in case. So we'll have the content ready. Just because it's something I want to make sure this world is very fleshed out and everything. So. Definitely a potential, yeah.
So besides our own games, which game would you say is similar to Alter Quest? That's tough because honestly, when we're playtesting it, I get excited because I just can't think of anything like it. Like it's pretty unique.
Because like we have this weird dichotomy where Adam loves dungeon crawl games.
I want to love.
Yeah,
I love the concept of dungeon crawls because I grew up with Hero Quest, and that was an experience I could never replicate when I was a kid. You know, like I loved Hero Quest, and like Warhammer Quest is also another one that was like really iconic for me. But as I got older and people started making more and more dungeon crawls, they never scratched the right itch for me, and it never felt like what I wanted out of it. Shadows of Brimstone, I wanted to like that one, but the more I got of it, the more I played it, it just didn't hit the right notes, and it became unwieldy to store. That was another big thing. It's like there's so much stuff, there's so many map tiles, it takes forever to play the game. So we just wanted to make a game that was a little more accessible as far as setup goes and collection, you know, where to put all this stuff, but it still felt like a dungeon crawl. And people are going to have a hard time grasping the fixed board thing. We're ready for that on the Kickstarter. People are going to probably be like, well, how's that going to be modular if it's always the same? It feels different every time. Like, it's because the rooms do not mean anything by themselves. You make the rooms as you go. I guess people just have to see the gameplay to understand what we mean, but it feels fresh every time, and I'm super excited about that fixed board element.
Do you think... oh, wait. Oh, hi, Martin. Bear People.
Steern.
Yeah. Do you think the focus of co-op play and strong narrative is what keeps this game more balanced than other games in the co-op genre, like, say, Imperial Assault? Yeah, that's something that we kind of wrestle with because balance is important, obviously, to make sure there's a challenging gameplay. And there's something that I personally wrestle with. I'm not sure if Adam shares this, but we talk about it sometimes. I prefer, like, I know people love co-ops. They lose. They think it's important to lose, like, you know, a lot of times you play so you can come back to them. I personally don't agree with that. I like co-op games that I usually win, but up to the point of winning, there's a lot of decisions to be made that I feel they're rewarding, and
it's fun. Like
it's
fun
to
struggle.
Play.
Like,
but because usually when I play a co-op, I don't play to win, but I usually want to finish something. In a lot of co-ops, you'll lose before you finish a story or something. I want to finish a story, so we like to design kind of a more narrative aspect where you're going through this process of telling a story of some sort. So you want to get to the end, but it's just a matter of like the struggle getting there. So.
But we also like to give people tools to make their game easier or harder easily. Like little optional rules like allies or rivals or, like upgrade cards to minions to give them more health or armor tokens, things like that would just, they're easy to implement if you feel like, oh, this game's fun, but it's too easy. Well, here, let's make it a little harder for you.
Yeah, sometimes games like Imperial Assault, which I don't play a lot of that, but I do remember when I played it, it felt almost more like meta a lot of times where you're kind of like balancing out these different like, superior actions you can do and you're like kind of min-maxing things. And we kind of try to avoid that. We don't want to rely on luck. We like have a lot of dice mitigation or luck mitigation with our dice and stuff. But I just tend to lean more toward giving the player more options and just setting up enough of a challenge that keeps it interesting,
the appeal to Street Masters is the small footprint and setup time. This game will have a bigger footprint than Street Masters, but I feel like the setup time is comparable, maybe a little bit more because there's more stuff to it. But I feel like compared to dungeon crawls, it's a breeze. Like most dungeon crawls take a long time to set up, and they actually, one of the biggest things I dislike about dungeon crawls is when they stop the game to find that tile that you're looking for. It just adds to the game time. People are sitting around waiting, and it's like sometimes it's cool to say exploration, but I don't feel like it pays off stopping the game every time you open a door to find that dungeon.
Yeah, one other important thing too with a lot of dungeon crawls is there might be less on the table sometimes, but you'll find that you'll have to pass around the rulebook constantly to check like what some keyword means or something. Well, with Alter Quest, you'll notice there's a lot of cards on the table and there's a lot of like things to reference. But that's to avoid having to pass around a rule book or
there's no scenario guide. Like that's another thing with Shadows Brimstone as an example. I'm not going to dog on it because I think people love it and it's a very popular game and I've had everything for it.
But we should talk about encounters too because that's what he's mentioning. So
let me just tell you one of the drawbacks was like when we're doing a quest, there's like this 2-page spread of tons of rules to read to prepare everybody. Like this is what we're doing in this scenario, and it's all up for information and stuff you have to reference during. In Alter Quest, it's stuff that comes out as you play. There's a deck of cards, you go into a room, and all these cards come out, and they give you rules piece by piece, so it's not like tons of upfront information. So.
Yeah, and one other thing we want to mention, we haven't talked about it or shown it yet, but there will be the kind of like Street Master style gameplay in this game because we're going to be introducing encounters with our first campaign. And what that is, it's kind of like the stages in Street Masters where you have a small, zoomed in kind of like just encounter, essentially like a combat encounter. It could be like a campsite, could be like a town square.
It'll look very much like Street Masters.
Yeah, so essentially it's going to be fantasy Street Masters for fans of that. So so not only can those be socketed into campaigns where you'll be, you'll go on a quest, you'll go camp, and you'll get ambushed in your camp, and you have an encounter, so you play this encounter within your campaign. You could also just take that encounter and just play it as a one-off, because you'll have all the decks there to do it. So we want to make sure we have lots of different ways to play this game, because we like to make boxes of toys that you can use in different ways.
Yeah, he's asking about legacy elements.
Which one is that?
It's after the co-op win rate percentage 1.
So did you pass up the?
Did I pass up some?
Yeah,
I just want to touch on that because you were talking about the campaign box, but like we do have ideas for legacy, but not legacy as in like stickering things, more like legacy as in sealed content. We do have ideas for that, which we might want to do, but we don't really want to do this sticker modifying stuff like that. We just want to do opening new content like as you discover it.
Yeah, in the way legacy would appear in this game would be if we added extra things. Like imagine if you had a town board. We added this town board, and like the town could be destroyed or built up. You could like reinforce it. Like that would be where legacy would come into play. It wouldn't be like you're ruining this board you have. It's easy to introduce that, but our first approach is going to be more about that whole. I always use this as a reference point. I don't think it's a spoiler, but like we plan on taking that same product model of like the Rise of Fenris Scythe expansion, which I really liked how they did that. It was a nice narrative campaign. They had all the sealed content you opened up and added stuff to the game. We want to kind of do that similar approach with how we do campaigns, but legacy is an easy inclusion if we choose to go that route. I saw the question there. Will the campaign support losing a scenario? So yeah, if you lose a scenario, you won't stop the campaign. You'll progress. It'll just have different consequences because there will be like kind of a choose your own adventure type narrative in the rule book where it'll tell you to read certain sections based on what happens within the campaign.
So I haven't played the new Lord of the Rings game yet. I've definitely been reading about it, and I've friends that have played it, and I've seen some.
I think I've done enough research on it. I have a copy coming to me, but I've done enough research on it where I think I know what to expect with the game, and I think it's going to suffer from the same problems I had with Mansions of Madness, where I'm all about theme, but there's a point where like it becomes too tedious of like having to search for certain tiles to put them out, when in reality what you're putting out there, besides having some cool different pictures, doesn't really add too much to this experience. And I see people playing, they have to like kind of reset the board and fix things, and so it's like. And
after my experience, I enjoyed Mansions. Like I thought it was cool the first few times I played it, but I never want to go back to it. Because I'm just not one that really looks for the app integrated board games. Like I think it's cool. It's a great way to do things with lots of content where you don't have to have tons of cards and stuff. But I just typically don't want to play games with an app normally. So
I am excited about the Lord of the Rings app integration. I just wish it wasn't. It didn't, because I don't like the flipping cards to resolve tests. Even though they have that whole.
I don't like that either.
They do have that whole preparation where you kind of control it, but I just don't like the physical act of like I'm going to test this and flip over some cards and see what happens. I want to roll some dice or something similar. It's more fun for me. That's just a personal preference. So yeah, there's things I'm excited about because I love the IP, but it's just it'll be interesting, I think.
As far as crossover characters from Brook City and Street Masters, I'm not sure about that because we kind of want Alter Quest to be a very strong world IP we can build, and so we don't want to have a bunch of strange characters that don't fit in. And this is probably the first game where we don't see Axel and Reese, so that might make people happy or sad. I don't know.
I don't know about that.
I mean, if there's a strong desire for it, we don't know, but we kind of want to not have too many like crossovers that don't make sense really.
Yeah, because there's a level of goofiness and like kind of removal from the immersion when you have that. But like with Brook City and Street Masters, it makes sense because they're this shared universe, and there'll be some nods to Alter Quest, because for example, Mickey Scott, who appears in both games, he's a criminal in Brook City and he appears in Aftershock for Street Masters. He's in a band called Alterstone, which in
the Cleansing the Altar quest, everybody has to go find an altar stone, so everybody has an objective. So
yeah, and a funny trivia is that mine and Adam's original board game company we were going to start was called Alterstone Games, because we've always had this kind of like idea for this setting, so we've always tossed around different terminologies like that. So there's a little Easter egg there, and also it's funny in the Aftershock stretch goals there was a stage a movie theater. And one of the movies playing, it was a bunch of horror movies showing, and one of them was about this vampire, and this vampire's name was Count Lorick, and Count Lorick is a very crucial character in this setting. So there's some little Easter eggs there, but they're like not really crossovers, so it's just kind of like.
So will combat in this game be as deep as Street Masters, but also has exploration, a bigger board, leveling, gearing up, and a story? So. This game is not focused on combat like Street Masters was, but it's very similar. It uses similar dice. It doesn't have defense tokens, but we have armor tokens that are more general tokens. And in this game, enemies don't necessarily roll dice. Everything in the game that you're trying to overcome is a test the heroes have to do. So for example, if an enemy is that's pretty cool. We're looking at sculpts that our Blacklist is sending us secret stuff, but. That's pretty massive. So for example, an enemy will have a test on their card that says inflict fortitude 7. So for example, that guy's hitting me 7, and I have to defend it with my fortitude. So I look at my fortitude, I have 2. So I'm rolling 2 dice, and every success that I roll is reducing the damage I'm taking. And then I also take into account my defense and any armor tokens. That's kind of how combat works. And when I'm attacking an enemy, it'll be an attack test. So I roll the attack test using the attribute that it lists, and the same thing, the enemy will reduce the successes I do with their defense and their armor tokens. That's kind of how combat works. So we'll also have exploration, bigger board, leveling up, and gearing during the campaign. There are search cards in the game, so you can search through rooms. Everybody has search cards in their deck. There's features you can search. The search deck is going to be like consumables, like potions and supplies and little items and stuff like that. But the equipment cards will be used in the campaign. That's where you'll get the upgraded equipment.
And we should mention too, all of these decks, the purpose of these decks being like fixed, they're like set, is they can easily be modified through campaign cards. So you might have a campaign search card that comes up. It's like somebody has to find some artifact. It would just get shuffled into like the top 5 cards of the search deck. You have to go find it or something like that. So that's the idea behind these decks being that way, because we can easily modify them, but you can learn them and know them. And the exciting part of the campaign is changing the things you know slightly, you know.
How big in terms of card count is each deck in the game? So hero decks are about 27 cards. The rest of the decks, like threat decks and quest decks, are typically 20 cards. Villain deck is 10 cards, because the villain deck is also kind of like a timer. After 10 rounds of the game, the boss will spawn, the villain will spawn. And so sometimes you're trying to win a quest before he spawns because you're trying to escape. Sometimes you're trying to bring him out to fight him, but that villain deck is 10 cards. The lurker deck doesn't have a count because it's going to continue to grow. Feature deck is typically 8 cards, unless specified by a quest. That means most quests will be 8 rooms, because the feature deck is how many rooms you're going to uncover.
That's 8 room max. You might not use all those rooms.
Yeah, and once the featured deck is empty, you can't explore you can't explore anymore unless the quest says otherwise.
So can you mention when the Kickstarter game will be available on Kickstarter? We've been saying
we can mention what we're working towards, because there's a lot of factors that need to be locked down that are out of our control. Like, we're doing demo kits that we need to get to some reviewers so people can like talk about the game and get the word out there, because a lot of people don't know about it yet. So we need to get that figured out, that schedule. Lots of little elements about Kickstarters. Kickstarter planning is a huge endeavor, but we're working towards late May. That would be ideal. We would love to get it out there late May, but we can't announce it yet because we just don't know if those factors will line up. But you know what we're working towards. We're working towards soonish. By summer, ideally.
So Kador's question about some games in Street Masters can be really quick. Will this game be the same? Is it more like 1 hour per player? So it'll depend on the quest you play.
Definitely not 1 hour per player.
Yeah.
I mean, typically we would say like
a 4-player game of this is quicker than the Street Master.
You know, like, so if you're playing the game, you know how to play it, you can play it under 2 hours, 4-player.
But one thing to mention too is, like I said, we'll be able to add those encounters, which will give you the option to play shorter. If you want to play just a direct, quick game, you can play an encounter. The quests on the dungeon board are more intended to be full experiences, like full evening game.
I would say, like, if you're playing solo, 45 minutes would be a good average.
Once you know the decks, you could probably 30 or 40 minutes easily.
And then you add like 15 to 20 minutes per player after that. Depending on the quest and experience level, all that stuff.
So Rado, this is interesting. Rado mentioned on his podcast there would be dice action selection here.
It's dice effect.
Yeah,
selection.
he's not mistaken, but it's just slightly different, because it's not like your turn is dependent on these dice, the alter dice, because we still have these kind of, we call them like level of success dice, because what you're doing, your only failure you can do on your turn is prolong your successes, because you'll gain focus if you fail something. So really you're just rolling to see how well you do on something. The alter dice, though, that's where you're kind of drafting what effects you want to trigger, because everyone will have access to different types of results on the alter dice, and the enemies also take certain ones, and the quest will take certain ones, and the altar will take certain ones. So you kind of have to balance out which ones you want to take, which ones you want to deny the enemy.
Yeah. And here's a good example too. Like for example, Cedrin is like the healer. He's the priest character. He can heal. He has a card here called Healing Hands, and the effect is choose a character within range to heal 3 damage. So that character, boom, I'm playing this as an action, I'm healing somebody. But there is an effect that uses the light rune that says each character within range may heal 1 damage and gain a focus. So I want to play this when there's a light in the pool, because I want that additional effect. So basically, the dice selection thing is for enhancing things you do in the game. And there's also things you can do for free. Like, for example, the steel mace I mentioned earlier, that exhausting to do damage to an enemy within range, that's, as long as there's a rune there for that, I can do that. And if there's an enemy that's like 1 health away from death, I can just finish him off real quick. It doesn't cost an action. I have that rune available to me. So that's kind of where that dice drafting comes in.
So We had the here retract this comment. You will have to retract it.
Was that the
the Rado one?
Oh,
Yeah. So Alt Quest in late May. So yeah, just easy solution. Just don't do Batman.
Yeah.
Just pass that up.
There's enough Batman out there.
Now I'm a huge Robin fan, and I was so on the edge of getting that just because of Robin. But yeah, just so I passed.
The problem is nowadays there's like no ideal time for Kickstarter. Like Kickstarter, no matter what you plan, there's always gonna be something else up there that's in some kind of competition, or it's impossible to plan on Kickstarter, like no matter what. Because I think last year when we did Aftershock in October last year, there were like 40 Kickstarters launched in October. It was insane, but at least Aftershock still did pretty well.
Do you like your games brain burning at all? If yes, what's the highest level of brain burn you want in a game? It kind of comes and goes, because when I first, like, one of my first like big solo games that I got into was Mage Knight, and that's probably like the top level brain burniness that I can enjoy. But there are games that have a lot of brain burn because like Street Masters can be super brain burny with some of the decks, some of the combinations, and obviously I really enjoy playing that. But I think there's more often than not than I want something that's not brain burning and more just just something quick, something fun. But we do design.
We like to have a lot of options. Like I think we were trying out dungeon crawlers as we were planning Alter Quest, seeing what was out there, what people liked. And I got a copy of Blackstone Fortress, Warhammer Quest Blackstone Fortress, because I like Games Workshop stuff. I always buy it because I like to paint miniatures. But we were playing that with our game group, and it kind of fell flat because there were just so many turns where you just couldn't do anything. It's like, oh, I can't do anything on my turn, so I'm just going to sit here. So that one thing we just always avoid is not having anything to do on your turn. So like in Alter Quest, there's usually quite a bit of things that you can choose to do on your turn. If you have nothing to attack, you can at least do a channel action or draw a card or something useful. So I don't necessarily like to be caught up in analysis paralysis, but I definitely like to have options on your turn.
Will this game in campaign mode give me the 0 to hero feeling?
It'll be hero to even more heroic.
Yeah, because your heroes are these iconic characters in the world. We made this very specific choice not to have like this kind of custom character mode, because like I think even though I love a lot of RPGs where I can make my character and everything and choose what I want, I think I've always preferred to play a specific character within a story and to have like options of what kind of archetype characters to choose from. So we wanted to have very specific characters that have backstories, that have places in the world, and they could easily be referenced within campaign stories. If you're playing a certain guy, he might have a different result based on, if you're playing Cedrin, he might do this really devout thing. The Rowan, the kind of the scamp, will choose to do something different. So we wanted to kind of play up that more than just having these I'm playing as this elf ranger, and then you have to kind of level up and become a hero. We'd rather it be you're heroic, you're doing heroic things, but you're just getting better at those heroic things as you go, and the enemy is getting
more options and slightly better options. So your cards will upgrade. You'll get new equipment that can do more things, and
I think that there are some times where I enjoy killing the rats in the sewer to level up, but I think like it's just in general I'd rather just get into the story, not try to grind my way up to be heroic.
How big is the biggest mini in the game? Just so you know, for Alter Quest, the features will be different sizes, but typically miniatures will be 1 space, or the max will be 4 spaces. So we do have villains that are huge, like Bulks, for example, is a big frog guy. He takes up 4 spaces. We call those huge miniatures. And they don't move around the board. They have specific ways that if they engage somebody, they're just going to be placed somewhere because they're so big that we don't count every single space they go through. Figures will be 1 space. Features will be either 1 space, 2 space, or 4 spaces. That's how features will work. Like, for example, a bookshelf will take up 2 spaces because it's more long ways. But as far as exact dimensions, I don't have that yet, but I can tell you that it takes up 4 spaces for the bigger guys. Will Alter Quest gameplay-wise be just Street Masters or Brook City style play with an RPG D&D theme reskin? No. It takes the core concepts of Street Masters and Brook City, the modular decks, but it kind of takes them a different direction. So I always said when we were doing Brook City that if you played Street Masters, you could play Brook City, you know how it works, but it feels totally different. This is the same way. Like this, you'll know how certain things will work in the game, but it feels completely different than those games. Appreciate you guys giving us something to do on your turns. Your group loves Black Plague, but there's always 1 or 2 players who draw the short straw and pretty much do nothing other than move. Yeah, that's kind of one thing we always try to avoid in our games is I don't like to have that player turn where it's like, oh, I'm not doing anything. So in Alter Quest, not only do you have choices for all the cards you can play, you can always draw a card, you can rest if you have supply, you need to get rid of some damage. Features, all the features in the game will have interact effects, so if you have nothing else, you can go over to the bookshelf and search that bookshelf and see what's on there. So there's always something to do in Alter Quest, which is something that I really enjoy playing the game. I never get sick of play testing it, so it's always a good sign that we're onto something good. So no baby-sized Cthulhu. No, we're not going to do any huge statues in this game. We're kind of trying to keep it. One of our games. What's that?
Example size.
Well, that's base-wise. Yeah, it's like this is 4 spaces, but we have no idea. Like, this is just something we use for prototypes. But we want to keep this game approachable, affordable, but also have that epic campaign feel that you want in a fantasy dungeon crawl game. So try to kind of balance that line there.
So will Alter Quest, did you do this Alter Quest?
Yeah, I did that one.
List? Okay.
One thing your games are missing at the moment is cool loot. How important is loot in the game? There's loot in Street Masters. It's not cool enough, but yeah, there's loot in this game. One thing we want to do is there's no loot in these one-offs where you're not going to a dungeon and just finding tons of cool magic items like Diablo. It's not like that because we wanted to make sure the one-off games were balanced and fun, and there was no out of crazy scaling for enemies would have to get tougher than if you got more stuff. So we want to make sure the one-off was balanced and fun, but the campaign play, it's more about finding loot and getting better over the course of several quests. So that way the enemies can get tougher as you get tougher.
Yeah, and it's a preference thing too. One of my least favorite things about games like Diablo, for example, is I hate managing loot. It's like one of my biggest pet peeves. I don't care. It's like I love getting a new thing. It's like, oh cool, I got a new thing. But I like those to be. I prefer stuff like Zelda, where like you find the hook shot. It's like this iconic thing. Like, oh great, I can do this, solve this puzzle. So like I like really cool iconic things you can find. But we'll have a balance of both because we'll have gear that you can upgrade and everything. And you start with your starting gear that you can.
Yeah, we want equipment to feel pretty like. You're not finding 7 swords in a dungeon. It's like, you go to town and you buy a new sword and it's a big deal. That'd be like that.
So this is an interesting question. Would you ever design a game that has standees?
Well, skip that. We skipped one. PvP, PvP mode. For this, I can probably just say absolutely not for this game. I just don't think it would be fun. It would be some kind of weird slapped on mode.
Yeah, it's like you'd have to take away co-op content to allow for that. And it's just like what this does well is co-op.
And I can also say that you probably never see me or Brady ever do a 1 versus mini game ever again. Like after I did Descent, that's probably my least favorite format for gaming. I can't stand the experience that it produces when playing 1 versus mini. It just never works out for us, for our game group at least.
So did you ever design a game that has standees and probably more content instead of miniatures and probably less content? So ironically, I
will say one thing that. The games we design miniature-wise, we never sacrifice content for miniatures.
Yeah, and it's pretty much why they have to go on Kickstarters because there's
Street Masters has way too much content.
Yeah, because even if Street Masters was a standees game, it's still an insane amount of content. Like the miniatures don't add anything to that or subtract anything to that because the number of decks and unique cards in that game, how much art we needed, it was just nuts. It was a huge endeavor. So yeah, we don't that isn't a factor in that. We're not opposed to doing like standees, but a lot of times the savings would not be as noticeable because you still need that much cardboard.
Yeah, punchboard is actually, if you're doing that level of standees, that's more expensive than miniatures. Yeah. So it doesn't save money.
That being said, like we have lots of games we want to do that don't have miniatures. We want to do card games and stuff too, but like there's just a big queue of
or less miniatures. There are games like for example, we had an idea for a horror themed game where there are miniatures for the heroes, but there wouldn't be any reason to have like lots of bad guy miniatures because it'd be more of a survival horror, like psychological horror game. Yeah. But yeah, we definitely want to do more affordable games, smaller box games. It's just we have these ideas for these cool games that just make miniatures just make better. It's the immersion. I think people that play a lot of miniature games understand that they just want that kind of tactical feel for these games.
After giving us more unique themes in Street Masters of Brook City, is the fantasy theme an attempt to get a wider commercial appeal?
Well, we do hope that this fantasy theme is unique.
Yeah, it is also just something where I mean, we come from fantasy. It's kind of our comfort zone. You know, we were in a fantasy metal band in college. I wrote a fantasy novel to go along with it. We got into fantasy gaming, originally like Warhammer and stuff. So,
and this is also a good way to look at it. Is we have this huge list of types of games we want to do in the MDS line because it's such a fun system to work in. And we have this big list of things we want to do, and the fantasy one's always been there, and it's also one of the most requested ones, so it kind of like, okay, well, if people want it that bad, and we want to do it, we might as well just do that next, because it made sense. But yeah, we also do hope that it brings more people to Blacklist and our other games, because I guarantee there's lots of people out there who would love to play Street Masters, but they don't like the martial arts theme.
Well, I mean, we've heard that. People have told us that directly. Yeah. It's like, you know, this game looks neat, but the theme is a turnoff for me. It's an instant, not a no-go. And I don't fully understand that myself, because like I always think that people beg for new themes, but yeah, it seems to prove itself. There are people who love it because of the theme, but there are a lot of people who don't even want to give it a shot because of the theme.
Which people are just very comfortable fantasy too. So I mean, it's just something that anybody can get into.
It's a universal gaming language almost, and that's fine with us because we love fantasy. So it kind of works, you know, on both ends. It's a wider appeal, and
it is. I would say it's a beneficial side effect. It's not why we did it, but it is a beneficial side effect that I would hope happens. It'd be nice.
When is the superhero themed skirmish MDS game being released?
We've been talking about that.
That's been on the radar because we're huge comic book nerds. I've been watching the Marvel movies with my daughter recently, so I'm pretty much in the whole Avengers mode right now. So I think like, oh, I want to do comic book game really bad. So we do want to do something like that. It's just a matter of when, because we have 2 or 3 really crucial games we're working on now besides Ultra Quest. So it's just a matter of when it's going to fall into the schedule.
Do you think there might be a demo copy of Alter Quest at Gen Con this year? Oh yeah, there should definitely be demos of Alter Quest.
We should have 2 new games to show.
The Kickstarter will be over before Gen Con. I can confidently say that. So it should be the demo kit at least at Gen Con.
Are you afraid of the Kickstarter bubble bursting at some point? There are so many games. I already own 200 myself. I have problems storing them. It is getting harder to get the big money. I think it can fluctuate. I don't see a burst because it's a new delivery method, a new engagement platform. Like I
do think people probably buy too much on a Kickstarter that they don't need, but they get excited about the hype of a new game.
Yeah, I think individual bubbles will burst, but like I don't know how it's going to affect the greater platform.
I think that if publishers put out games quickly that just aren't good, and people get them in time and realize that, okay, well, this is like the 3rd game this publisher's made that I haven't enjoyed, maybe I'll just stop buying games from this publisher. That would happen, I think. But I think that if publishers keep putting out good games, people will want to buy them because they're good and they're fun.
Yeah, so I think it's something people can always speculate on, but I think when it comes down to it, it just keeps growing and growing. And if you look at the numbers, I think it was last year, board games were like, what was like 50% or like some big percent, 25%?
Huge chunk of money for Kickstarter.
Yeah,
I don't know the numbers. Exactly.
Yeah, board games makes Kickstarter a lot of money, so I think they're going to do what they can to help that out. Do you anticipate more games coming to Kickstarter this
year? If there's another one, it's going to be later in the year.
We do plan on having one more after the Ultra Quest. That's the plan. Is we'll have Ultra Quest, then maybe one more. I don't see any more than that. I think that'd be like the max if it happens. So. Any plans to support fan-created content? Oh, I'm not sure.
If they make it through all the content we have planned.
Yeah. I'm not sure the best way we can kind of guide that or like kind of help that. We can provide templates or whatever, but I'd love to see that.
I think
for sure.
I think our graphic designer could probably put together some blank templates. It's tough because a lot of times when our graphic designer's wrapping up a game, send it to the printer, they're starting on the next game, the next project, because publishers have to keep working in advance. It takes a long time to get games made, so we'd love to support it however we can.
Yep. I think we caught up on questions now.
Yeah, I think I was trying to wonder if there's anything else we're going to talk about. As far as hero decks, I think I covered most of them. Actions, reactions.
Love the idea of an MDS hero game. Would love a MDS horror game. But do you guys worry that you might grow tired of the MDS?
So not us. I mean, fans. Players might. But
we love working on that. Now the thing is MDS doesn't totally dictate all the mechanics behind the product model, because MDS is more like the product model itself, having these fixed decks. For example, we're working on an unannounced game right now that uses the MDS, much lighter, much quicker. We just play tested this morning, and it's probably like what, 40 minutes.
45 minutes.
Yeah, so it's a pretty quick game, but it's a very simplified version of it. So there's a lot to do in there.
Yeah, and it's like
and it's still kind of just scratching the surface really because we've only had the 2 games published right now, which is Street Masters Brook City. This will be the 3rd one, so we can do a lot within that, and it's like I kind of look at it as in it's not comparable to like the FFG LCG model, but I don't think anybody's gonna really question.
Yeah, it's like FFG are getting tired of doing LCGs.
Yeah,
well, no,
they can do. They have to do
wanna,
less because
like them. So.
They have more ongoing support for them. But
yeah, it's more of a product model than a game design system because, like Brady said, it just you can change like one little thing in the system and it plays totally differently. You know, like the way the cards work. The concept is really just here's how this game is put out, how it's released. You know, like it's released with these decks of cards that are put together to create different combinations, different scenarios within the game.
Yeah, so. In my mind, what MDS means to me is like deck-driven games, interesting dice mechanics that aren't just like pass-fail, and usually it doesn't have to be like minis, tactical minis of some sort. So like I mean, not even tactical really, just so that's what it's been. It can change. But that being said, we have other games working on that aren't MDS, so that's there's always that as well. It's just if they keep getting attention and people will enjoy them, and we have so many themes to explore using a proven system that we can just keep improving and make different. Because even though Street Masters, Brook City, and Alter Quest are all driven by this similar design philosophy, they all feel drastically different when you play them. They just provide different experiences altogether. So,
what would be your dream IP to work on? That's funny because Blacklist asks me that all the time, and my answer is always our own. Like we were much more interested in creating IPs. Like Alter Quest has been so fun because we get to build a world, and we get to pretty much dictate what goes on in there. Working with licensors is not something I enjoy.
And usually those licenses come from things that aren't board games. So like. A lot of board game translations try to simulate too much of what the actual original IP was. I'll take, for example, like one of the games I love playing right now, like a video game, is Blaster Master Zero. That's there's 2 games for Nintendo Switch. Blaster Master Zero and Blaster Master Zero 2 just came out. Blaster Master was my favorite NES game of all time. So like that IP means a lot to me, but I don't know if I actually want to do a direct board game version of that because it'd be too different, I think, from the video game experience. But I would love to take what I like about Blaster Master and invent our own IP based on that kind of just the general spirit of that IP. So that's kind of how we think about IPs, is we just want to put our own spin on them. But if I had to provide an answer, I'd probably say something within the Resident Evil.
Resident Evil Outbreak would be one that I'd be like, okay, that'd be cool. I love the concept of that.
Because multiplayer Resident Evil is like the ideal game.
It's funny, Mask game, the game anytime soon. We actually are working on an original IP that is like
it's pretty much because
influenced by Mask.
Yeah, that was one of my answers before because I was like, Blacklist is like, what IPs do you want? I brought up Mask a lot, but Mask is actually getting made into a new movie with like the Fast and Furious director, so I have no idea what that'll look like. So that IP is kind of might be get away from what it was. So we kind of want to do our own.
Yeah, we are all about fun games and stuff like that. So I just don't really focus on like taking other IPs and trying to capitalize on that success. It's like we feel like we just want to make cool games, and usually that's kind of more fun in the freedom of our own settings.
So another question here: we anticipate some sort of sorceress hero, and if so, any teases on the kind of magic she uses? Yeah. So on the cover, Quella, the harpy, she is definitely one of the main sorceresses.
I was gonna say she's cool because she can, more than any other hero, she can manipulate the altar pool a lot. She's good at rerolling altar dice and getting the right thing out there for the other heroes.
And Marvel won't return our calls. It's the next one.
But she uses all kinds of magic. She has Searing Blasts, Wind Chill, Quakes, all kind of Quake attacks all enemies in her room. She's the damage healer. She can't take a lot of damage, obviously.
She's more of a generalist, like more of a primal magic user, like most harpies are, because harpies are mostly like tribal and nomads,
and she's cool because one of her starting pieces of equipment are her talons. She can just scratch you and move around fast and stuff. That's her thing.
All right, I think it's caught up now.
Unless anybody else has any last minute questions, we will return maybe later this week, maybe probably next week, to chat some more. Next time we'll focus on threat decks maybe, or quest decks maybe, and how they function within the game. So thanks for joining us, guys, and feel free to comment on this page or the Facebook page if you have any questions that you want us to cover next time. If you missed this stream and want us to talk about something specific next time, let us know.
Brook City shipping. Last we heard, I think
I assume by the end of this week we should be stuff.
I think Blacklist was in direct talks with Black Box and gave a deadline saying we need to see some movement. I think it was by the 12th, which is this Friday. So I don't know if by that means that we'll see actual products like being shipped out, or at least shipping notices being sent out. But there's supposed to be movement by Friday. So
we're just as anxious as everybody else.
So and it's even more because like I know that we're really close to one of the facilities. So it's like. We know that it's real. It's sitting down there, so it's just a matter of when they and the full story behind that is boring, like most of these business proceedings. But it's the whole queue, being stuck in a queue, losing your place in a queue, and then just kind of like lack of communication on certain steps of that process. So, but yeah, we're doing what we can, and we're asking as much as possible. So we'll see what happens. And it just froze up when he said this.
Oh, see you next time.